And the third and final preview today, if you notice there's more space between my videos, because, once again, using wireless in the States means it's going to be slower. I don't know why that is. I don't know. I do have the option of a Cat 5 connection, which I think will be faster. I didn't bring a Cat 5 cable because I haven't needed a Cat 5 cable in so long. Ethernet cable is the standard term everybody uses. But anyway, here we go. The Vancouver portion of the show. And Vancouver's tricky because there's a lot of names on this board. But is there a playoff team on this board? I don't know. I really don't. This team's a mystery. So, 81 points this past season. Nope to the playoffs. 73 points the year before. Nah, no playoffs. 69 points the year before that. That's a giant no for the playoffs that year. 2015-2016, 75 points. No playoffs there. They were out. And, of course, 2014-2015, Willie Desjardins somehow got that team into the playoffs. It was a bounce back from the miserable year they had under Tortorella. They get 101 points. They go out in the first round against Calgary. It wasn't really that close of a series. In all honesty, they probably should have missed the playoffs that year as well. So that's a long time. And so when I see people saying, well, they've got to take their time with this rebuild and do it right. Look, they've been near the bottom of the standings for 4 years. The thing is, too, they're slowly moving their way up. So they gained 4 points from 2017 to 2018. They gained another 8 points from 2018 to 2019. And it's a slow, painfully slow build. Another 7 or 8 points would get them to 88 and probably not the playoffs. I could see that. I could see this team being above 500, being respectable, and still barely missing the playoffs, which would be a gut punch to Canuck fans. It would mean we'd keep our own first-round draft pick next year, but not in the way you'd like to. So, this season that we just had, 225 goals for, which is 25th in the NHL. 254 goals against, which is 20th in the National Hockey League. They've got to get that under control. You can't allow 29 more goals than you score and make the playoffs. That's just not going to happen. And a couple of East Coast swings made that an out-of-reach proposal for this team. So, in October, they were 8-6. That was a brutal October. 14 games that month, and they came out of it pretty well. And Canuck fans were pretty optimistic. 11-14-3 by the end of November. Optimism dies. Usually that means an East Coast swing. 19-19-4 at the end of December, and some respectability there. And they were playing relatively well at points, and Canuck fans weren't happy with me for saying, yeah, they're still not going to make it. Sorry. And I feel bad in saying it. January, 23-22-6 at the end of that month. At the end of February, they were 27-29-9. At the end of March, 34-35-10. They had 2 games left, and they could have finished above 500. They lost both of them. They ended up 35-36-11. They had been 35-35-10, and I was like, come on, if you just win these last 2 games and get to 84 points. But they lost one in overtime, and they lost the other one in regulation, so they get 1 point instead of 4, and end up with 81 points instead of 84. So they've had a losing record 4 years in a row, which with the way that three-point systems work now is saying something for just how poorly this team's played for how long. And I think we're at kind of the breaking point where if they have another down season, let's say they fall back down into the 72-73 point range, you're going to see half-empty arenas for Vancouver games. Now, their MVP is Elias Pettersson. Yes, Pettersson's that good. There are other really good players on this team, but it is Pettersson's team. Right or wrong? Guy coming out of his first season, it's his team. I don't envy his task, where he's in a Canadian market that's starved for hockey in the playoffs, and he's probably going to be the guy who has to do it. And not only that, he has to show he can stay healthy for a full 82 games. Goals leader, I expect Brock Besser, because I expect Brock Besser to be signed. Yes, I expect him to be signed. Please sign a contract, Mr. Besser. Please and thank you. Dark horse, I went with Adam Gaudette. Gaudette, with each insertion into the Canucks lineup looked better and better during the season, and by the end of the year, he looked pretty solid, to the point where Gaudette not being in the lineup, it's probably not going to happen. I think there's some uncomfortable conversations to be had once we reach the fall. There's going to be a couple of veterans who I think could end up getting waived if there's no trade value for them. What about? I went with Josh Tevis. Tevis got signed out of Princeton. There was a lot of hype about him when he got signed from the Canuck media. And yet right now, he doesn't project to be on the roster. He projects to probably go to the American League. But he's a good player. And it'll be interesting to see if the Canucks make moves involving their blue line, considering there's a lot of blue liners here. But again, is it a playoff level blue line? That's where the debate comes in. Trade bait, I went with Brandon Sutter as just because his contract and just the fact that I think they can replace him with Gaudette. I think Gaudette should be the third line center. And so Brandon Sutter, who I guess you could drop him to fourth line, but that's where Jay Beagle is, it becomes a very uncomfortable conversation at that stage. Because then what do you do with Sutter? If Gaudette's ready, he's ready. I don't see the point in keeping him out of the lineup. I understand keeping prospects out of the lineup when they're not ready, but when a guy's ready to play and produce, he goes into the lineup. So let's get over to that roster and take a look. So the first line, likely, I would say JT Miller ends up with Pettersson and Besser. That being said, you've got Pearson with Horvat and Ferland, I would think, on the second line. I could see Virtanen on that second line as well. I could. Virtanen had 15 goals last year. I think there's a 20-goal season there. I think there could be a 25-goal season there. Ferland, 17 goals last year for Carolina. There is some scoring in this lineup. It's understated and underrated, but it's there. Keep in mind, Virtanen was not healthy the entire season. If he'd been healthy the whole year, I think he would have had 20 goals. Josh Levo, thank you, Toronto. Sven Berchi on the left side. Levo probably deserves to be on the third line, but Berchi's not going to be lower than third line. So adding JT Miller means maybe Berchi could be on the move. I would have had Berchi as trade bait. The problem being Berchi, with his concussion he went through last year and how scary that was, I don't think he'd have trade value right now. And until we see him on the ice in September and taking part in training camp and saying, yep, I'm 100%, I'm good to go, I will still have reservations about just how healthy he's going to be. Louis Eriksson is still there. I've got him on the roster. I don't expect him to be a National Hockey League player this fall. I don't know that there's a market for him. And I don't know that there's a point in keeping him on the Canucks either. He's not happy. They're saying all the right things right now to kind of smooth things over with what he said about his role under Coach Green, but I do think that the Canucks are going to end up sending him to Utica if they can't trade him, which gives them some cap relief. Not very much considering how much he makes. But then what this does too is Antoine Roussel is injured right now. That's why he's not projected into the lineup, and he may very well find himself outside the lineup. It gets very uncomfortable. Tim Schaller, probably not an everyday player. Tyler Mott, I think, will be. He has a lot of desire and a lot of heart. The overall talent, it doesn't matter. He's got the heart, the desire, and he gives it his all every shift. So until there's somebody good enough to knock him out of an everyday roster spot, to knock him out of the number 13 forward position, he's going to be a National Hockey League player for the Canucks. I figure he plays ahead of Eriksson. But I put Eriksson in the fourth spot because I don't know. Anyways, you've also got Nikolai Goldobin. I've had Canuck fans ask me, well, what about Goldobin? Who does he take out of the lineup? Do you really take Pearson out of the lineup for Goldobin? No. Berchi? No. Levo? No. I would argue when Roussel's healthy? No. Goldobin he's a speedy puck handler who will underwhelm with his numbers. And there's no grit to his game to put him in a bottom six role, and I'm not sure how much growth there is there for him. So I expect to see Goldobin moved before the season starts. Zach McEwen is an interesting one as well, and as pointed out previously, here's Adam Gaudette. Who does Gaudette push out of a spot? It may very well end up being Brandon Sutter. So Zach McEwen, a fan favorite in Vancouver, does he end up getting a number 13 forward position? I can't see him being an everyday player, but I could see him being the first guy in if there's a healthy scratch or if there's a scratch due to injury. Reed Boucher still with the organization, and Justin Bailey came in as a free agent. He's going to end up playing in Utica. The blue line is where things get interesting too. You got Alex Edler, Chris Tanev, Quinn Hughes, and Tyler Myers as your top four. We can debate to death whether or not that top four is poor or middling. I would argue that until Quinn Hughes shows over a full season that he is ready for his role with the Canucks to be that top guy, it's middling, and there's some risk here. I like the Myers contract. I'm fine with it. I'm not as upset with it as other people are. It doesn't put the Canucks into cap hell anytime soon. I still think Tanev may very well be on the block, but Tanev can't stay healthy for more than about 50 games a year. There aren't very many teams that are going to pick up a guy and give up a lot for that guy who they know is going to miss about 40% of the season. So Tanev is still a Canuck right now. Jordy Ben, Troy Stetcher, then are your third pairing. They won't hurt you there, and Jordy Ben is a bonus there. And Stetcher, I think with a lesser role, could be an interesting one. I also thought about putting Stetcher as potential trade bait, but with the departure of Ben Hutton, I think Stetcher sticks around. I knew not both of them would stick around, but I think they kept the right one between Hutton and Stetcher. And this is why Hutton coming back to Vancouver isn't a possibility. It's not that he wouldn't want to come back. It's not that the Canucks don't like Ben Hutton. It's just you got Ulevy, who maybe this is the year that he finally gets over this hurdle of either bad luck or bad injuries or both. Oscar Fantenberg, who came in as a free agent. Josh Tevis, as previously mentioned, is he going to end up earning a roster spot, or does he just go to Utica? Alex Biega, all he does when he goes into the roster is play well and never complains about being a number 7 or number 8 guy in the organization. Ashton Sautner played a bunch of games last year because everybody was injured. Brogan Rafferty, who also came in at the same time as Tevis. Guillaume Brisebois, and there's Jet Wu. Just to throw that name in there, Jet Wu, who I don't think makes the Canucks out of training camp, but with his offensive upside, they're at least going to look at it. This blue line here, you can argue that Hughes has that offensive upside, and you'd be right. But everybody else outside of that is kind of meh offensively. Even Edler at this stage of his career, I would say maybe 40, maybe 45 points. So if Jet Wu comes in and shows some flash and dash and not a whole lot of defensive deficiencies, again, we may see a roster that's made up of a lot younger players, and we may see some veterans getting waived. If they're going to hold true to this, the best players will play thing that they seem to have started to do, then we'll see some of these kids probably make the roster in some surprising waiver wire moves by the Vancouver Canucks later on in training camp. In goal, you've got Jacob Markstrom, Thatcher Demko, and the number 3 is the recently signed Zane McIntyre. McIntyre's a guy you can call up. You can put him on waivers to send him back to the minors. He'll clear waivers every time. And that's a stopgap until Michael DiPietro's ready. When DiPietro is ready for regular work at the NHL level, it'll likely be Demko and DiPietro. That would likely be when Markstrom makes his way out. Markstrom, this may be his last year in Vancouver. He had a very good season last year. It's taken time for him to develop into a solid NHL goaltender, but he's there. And so I have no doubt about Vancouver's goaltending. I have very little doubt about their overall ability to put the puck in the net if Besser actually signs before season starts. And Miller and Ferland just put up the goals they did last year. That would add 30 to this roster. The Vancouver Canucks are going to look different this year than they did last year. Are they going to be a playoff team? It's tricky because I can't see them. I can't see them finishing higher than 4th. And by my predictions, that would put them outside the playoffs. I can't see them being lower. I'm going to try not to bugger. Or I can't see them being lower than 6th. The additions they've made should at the very least prevent them falling back from that 81-point mark. I can't see them falling back to the basement of the division. But it's tricky because, again, this is a good, not spectacular roster with some players who are still young and coming into their own. The blue line makes me nervous. There's a lot of names. There's a lot of players. But I'm still nervous that this defense, which is much better than it was last year. Last year, I argued it was the worst blue line in the league. I would not say that now. I also argued last year that when it was Markstrom and Nilsson, that was one of the least intimidating tandems in the league, one of the least effective. And now with Markstrom and Demko in the year Markstrom just had, I would put them around middle of the pack. The offense should be there. Berchi's health's going to be interesting to watch. Ferland's health's going to be interesting to watch as well, because having gone through a concussion on his end as well, Ferland may very well not be the physical guy that Canuck fans are expecting, and so it may fall more on Virtanen. If Ferland falls short in the physical category, it may fall on Virtanen to be that guy. Going to be a very, very interesting year for Vancouver. I want to be wrong on this. I do. I want to see them surprise everybody and end up higher up in the standings. I think Jim Benning's done the best he can to get this team into a playoff position for next year. I don't know that there was a whole lot more he could do. Vancouver's not a really desired location for top-notch unrestricted free agents, and they've been a pretty poor team for a while now, and it's hard to break out of that. They're going to do their best. Let me know what you guys think about that in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing right through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will talk to you again soon.